Picture. I'm your host, Joanne Taylor, and my guest is Lawrence Taylor. He's no relation to me, but he's a friend of this show. He's been on several times. He's a biologist and an underwater videographer. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
How many times have you been on this show now?
This must be my fourth or fifth now, I think.
And so has it been a while since you've been on?
It's been a little while, yeah. But
so you've been up to some activities in the meantime.
Yeah, I thought what I'd show tonight is a series of things that I've shot over the last year of '95. It's been rather diverse, from saltwater to freshwater subjects, and yeah, I thought I'd start out with actually I think I'll start off with whales because they're always so popular. Mm-hmm. Many people now know about Wilma, the Guysborough beluga whale. She's been quite a celebrity, and she's been shown on Discovery Channel and elsewhere, and she's been known internationally, partly because of her friendship with a husky dog a year or so ago. Anyways, I've had the opportunity to dive with this animal 4 or 5 times now, and the last time I went out with my wife and my son, and I think what we're about to see is probably summarizes what everybody feels when they see Wilma, because she's such an incredible animal. Mm-hmm. So we'll just watch and listen to my son for a second.
Where'd she go? Got your dad's toe. Where'd he go?
I like that. My son always, he had so much fun watching that whale and then watching his dad jump in the water. But this is Wilma. She's a female beluga whale. She's somewhere around 5, 6 years old now. They, several years ago, took a piece of skin that had sloughed off from her and genetically fingerprinted her. And that way they determined which family of beluga whales she came from, which there's an Arctic group and then there's a St. Lawrence group. And she's from the St. Lawrence group. So the story is that she came down several years ago with her mother as a young calf, and her mother died and she remained behind. And she seems to like the area, and she seems to like the front of my lens, to which she seems to have given a little present to the camera. But she enjoys the area, she seems to be getting enough food, and has stayed. And this will be, if she's around the summer, this will be her 4th year at the same spot. She usually resides around one buoy in a channel in Chedabucto Bay. When she's not there, she's usually off foraging for food. But when she returns, she loves to greet people, and often there's several boats in the area, and she will go from boat to boat to greet everybody and to sort of say hello. And I've had the opportunity to hop into the water with her and experience her. Actually, I think I was the first one ever to take photographs of her, which is this footage of her underwater. But then last year, later in the summer, I also had a chance to film her again, and her attitude has changed quite a bit. It's not, everyone has been so friendly to her and has really taken care of her that she's very almost affectionate now. She will come up to you, the diver, and stay quite close to you, as long as you don't try and force yourself upon her and touch her. If you let her come to you, she'll get very close. And in fact, we'll see in a second or so that I actually had a hard time filming her because she was beside me all the time. I was sort of hoping that she'd move away.
Will she stay here for life, and will she mate here, or will she have to go away?
It would be nice that she would stay here and mate, because the water is cleaner from where her family originates. I'm sure many people have heard the stories of beluga whales dying in the St. Lawrence River and then being considered toxic waste and having to be disposed of as toxic waste. So with her living here now, she gets a nice clean environment. Now this is a shot of myself and Wilma. I had to put the camera out at arm's length to take a shot of the two of us. And she loves fins. I don't know what the attraction is. She likes to nibble on them. She's always liked to do it. She's always done that. And she always had a fascination for the lens, the camera. And I'm not sure if it's because she's not quite sure what it is, or she's looking at her reflection in the dome of the camera. She enjoys going to the bottom and playing now. When I first met her, I tried swimming down towards the bottom, and she didn't like that at all. She moved away and waited for me to come back up the surface. Last summer, you could almost perceive that she was getting annoyed at me because I wouldn't go down at the bottom. And of course, only being able to hold my breath for at best 90 seconds, you could perceive that she was getting annoyed that I wouldn't come to the bottom and stay and play and do this.
What's she doing here?
Well, this it's a bit of play that we would go through. The camera's on the bottom. I'm doing a headstand on top of the camera in order to get this shot of her because she doesn't like us just lying there taking photographs of her anymore. She wants to go to the bottom and play around with the rocks and hide with the kelp. And she often will pull kelp off the bottom or bring it up with her and move the rocks around.
What's that scar from?
She has several scars from boats. I'm not sure which part of the boat that would have hit her to cause that long scar, but she has on the back of her tail several years ago, she got a large sort of chunk taken out of her by a couple of kids going after her with the motorboat. But she's healing, she's healed well. Those scars will eventually become quite minimal. She has lots of little scars on her snout, but that's just standard because we're rooting around in the ground for food. And off she goes in the sunset. Now, this is a whale shoot of a whole different color. Last summer I had the chance to go off to Sable Island and to an area called the Gully with Hal Whitehead, who's a whale biologist at Dalhousie. Now, Hal's specialty is sperm whales, and you might have seen an article or two of his in National Geographic. But we were out to look for bottlenose whales. But one of those nice little things, this is a blue whale in the Gully. And Hal has never seen blue whales in the Gully before, so he was quite excited when we saw this. I wish the footage had been slightly better. This is a wide-angle lens. I was standing on the front of the boat being bounced up and down. You'll see the weight come over and splash the camera lens a couple of times.
How long is that whale?
Probably somewhere around 50 to 60 feet long.
No,
A very large animal. And they're very distinctive. I've seen fin whales in the Bay of Fundy, and they have the length, but they're very narrow. They're sort of pencil thin. The blue whale is a large beast. Very impressive.
It looks a bit rough there. I'm going to have to keep my eyes on the horizon.
Yeah, this is a calm day too.
Oh, that's better.
Now this is a really calm day. But we spent 2 weeks out on this cruise, and we got one day like this. The weather, in fact, as we were waiting for weather to improve, we sat hove to, which means sails more or less not driving us forward, just to maintain our balance and so on. We had 50-knot winds and 15 to 18-foot seas.
Oh, no, thank you.
And it was pretty rough. I was very pleased we got this one day. And so this was our quarry. We were after bottlenose whales. And they almost look like dolphins. Now, to set this up, I'm up a mast, 9 meters up off the water, looking down onto these animals. And they're somewhere between 25, 30 feet long, with some larger animals.
How many are there?
There are about 7 animals in this shot.
Are they a family or friends?
It's a pod. Now this is what Hal and his graduate students are working on, is to determine what the makeup is of these pods, whether it's a group of females with calves with a male around, or maybe just during breeding season males come to find the pods. But I don't know that information yet. So we found the animals early in the morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, as I was finishing my shift, in this beautiful, it got about 20 degrees that day, nice and warm. The wind was very low to nil in the morning, and these animals just kept passing by our boat. And you see they're a toothed whale. They look like a bottlenose dolphin, but they're a whale with a small bill beak in the front.
What's the purpose of having it in that way? Why was that developed?
The design? I don't know. Now these are very deep diving whales. The gully is several hundred, maybe close to 1,000 meters in depth at its bottom. And these animals dive down for squid and other delectables down in the deeper reaches. We ended up following about 3 groups of animals. We would spot one group coming up, we'd go over, we were looking at the blow rate to see how often they were breathing, the makeup. They were taking photographs of fins and flukes and so on for identification.
Oh, that's lovely.
A little sparkle in the water. And then the animals would dive, and we'd know they'd be gone for about half an hour. And so we'd try and spot another group blowing somewhere else in the vicinity and go off and see them. Now this footage, as far as I know, there's little to no other underwater footage of bottlenose whales. I got one chance to hop in the water for several minutes, and 4 or 5 animals approached me, but as large as they are, and I found this with whales, once they saw me, they would not come close. And so I got a brief glimpse of these unusual looking animals. They sort of look like a sperm whale with a Halloween beak placed in the front of them.
Almost like one of the mythical beasts that don't come too near. But
now we've changed. Now we've gone from mammals to fish. And these are the bluefin tuna that the fishermen in St. Margaret's Bay catch in their traps almost yearly. They've had quite a few animals over the last few years, and I had the opportunity to hop into the pens and film them. It's a little deceptive to tell what size of animal this is, but most of these fish are somewhere around 6 feet in length and will range from 5 to 900 pounds in weight.
that's a lot of cans of tuna.
Yeah. I've done this with salmon, trying to figure out how many cans you could actually fit in one animal. Now, as large as the animal is, they would not come closer than about an arm's length to me. I had one just lightly graze me on the leg as it went by, and they move quite quickly. In the waters, there isn't a great deal of clarity in the water, but they surely knew where I was and would not get very close. Now the practice is the fishermen catch these fish as they follow the mackerel into their traps, and then they move the tuna into a holding pen, and then they feed them bait, which is usually mackerel, to fatten them up, and then they wait for the price to be at its best. But I have heard 2 years ago of a fisherman who sold his tuna at $52 a pound, a 1,000-pound dressed animal. So there's a lot of money to each of these animals. But my pleasure is being in the water and being able to film them.
They look like they're made of metal.
Yes.
Armor.
I've had a chance I found one dead in their pen. They wanted me to take a look one day because they couldn't find it anymore in their sounder. I went down and found the animal that had died. But I got the chance to bring it up, and it's not like you've ever felt a fish before. It's slick surface, and you couldn't put your hand into it or press it very hard. It's just very firm. Now we're off to see some invertebrates. A spot I always return to every year is Paddy's Head because it has such a variety of animals and plants in the area, and you never know what you're going to see, and you always see something on every trip. And this was a fairly large comb jelly, somewhere around 6 or 7 inches long. And I was intrigued with its movement in the water column.
Looks like Fantasia.
Yeah. An anemone, somewhere around 50 or 60 feet down in the water. Just some of the pretty things you get to see. Wolffish, for those who don't dive, wolffish often like to tuck away in the rocks. And this is a finger sponge at the entrance of its home. You can also tell these finger sponges often are found below 60 feet, so it gives you some idea of the depth. And this good-looking chap is a sea raven, trying to impress me with its size. The challenge for me is always to try and get in front of the fish to film them, and They don't like that because they always feel if you're going to get ahead of them, you might eat them. So they're always trying to veer away and show their rear end to you. Now, my nickname for this is Hot Lips, but this is a lion's mane jellyfish. And with the sea scallop research that I had worked on several years ago, we got to know these animals very well. Their tentacles that descend from that bell can get to be 15 feet long sometimes. But what happens is that they will break off and attach themselves to mooring lines. And as we would go up and down the mooring lines to our scallop site, tentacles would go across your mouth. And the sting is very similar. It's not the sharp prick of a bee sting, but it's that burning sensation afterwards. It takes quite a while to go away. Yeah, gained a lot of respect for them. Patty's Head always has its share of skates, and I find they're quite interesting animals because they have locomotion with their pelvic fins. They can move along the bottom like this, as though they're almost walking. Their pectoral fins, the larger fins out to the side, they have that flapping motion. And then there's also side-to-side motion with their tail. So they have quite a few means of getting around. And off they go. I like flounder, especially in the spring, because flounder always come to you. You don't have to work too hard to find a flounder. This is a little later in the summer, and they're quite a bit shyer. But in the spring, the sculpins and the flounder will usually come to you because they're attracted to motion.
Why in the spring and not the rest of the year?
They've got spawning on their mind. Not that they're interested in me particularly, but this is a school of sand lance. They school around the shores at Patty's Head, trying to avoid being prey for pollock. And then if you move offshore a little bit deeper into 50, 40 feet of water, you can sometimes come across behemoths like this. This lobster's somewhere around the 20-pound mark. A very large animal.
It's got quite a left hook there.
It sure does. And we'll see in a second, there were actually two animals of the same size down there. But what's interesting is that large claw that's closest to the camera right now, that's the crushing claw. And you can see it's on the left-hand side of the animal. The other lobster that we'll see in a second, its crushing claw is on the right side. So you wonder if there's a right-handed and a left-handed lobster here that we're going to look at.
I never noticed them as I was eating.
But these are big. They're very impressive.
How old would they be to be that big?
Oh, I mean, I'm just guessing, but they're probably getting up to the half-century mark, somewhere around there. They create a lot of new lobsters every year. Now you see this lobster will move in, and there's another lobster just tucked underneath the rock ahead of it. And we're going to see who wins supremacy for this little cubby hole. And there wasn't much question as to who had rights to this cubby hole. The other lobster just moved out without a fight at all. They never went to fisticuffs. And then you can see that crushing claw is on the right-hand side of this lobster.
A set.
Yes. And I was quite pleased too that I actually got to get this close to them. Often they're very shy or can be very aggressive, and these two just seemed not to mind my presence. Now this is a bit of an alien to our area. This is called codium seaweed. You may have seen it on the shoreline, washed up amongst some of the other seaweeds. It hasn't normally been found along our shores, and now it's being seen more often. And some of the biologists I've talked to are interested in seaweeds in the rocky shore are really going to want to know how this plant, I should say, affects the other seaweeds in the area. Now we've jumped. Last year I got to play with, we're into freshwater now, and this thing that looks like it's trying to play like a piece of wood is a chain pickerel. And chain pickerel have been introduced illegally into Nova Scotia. I filmed this in a little pond called Lily Pond, and the chain pickerel has been seen elsewhere, especially towards the Yarmouth area. It's been there since somewhere around 75 years or so. But it's in areas, It has the ability to withstand more acidic waters. It also has salt tolerance. And the concern about this fish being in our waters now is that, as in Shorts Lake runs down Green Creek into Shubenacadie River, which means that this fish can now get into the Shuby River because of its salt tolerance and move up right through the Shubenacadie watershed.
And perhaps take over?
Well, it will certainly disrupt the diversity in the systems that it's in. And this pond, I talked to several fishermen, this pond supposedly had smallmouth bass, which was also introduced. I saw no smallmouth bass. I didn't see any of their nest sites. I saw one or two catfish and one eel. I saw no tadpoles. I saw very limited insect diversity, only water boatmen, and the rest were chain pickerel.
Why would people bring them in illegally?
Because of, in the Yarmouth area, the acidic water, they have more of an acidic acid rain problem towards that end of the province. These fish being able to tolerate it, and sport fishermen wanting something to fish, they were brought in.
And this is the chain link effect that gives it its name?
Yeah, sort of a finger-length size, they look more like little zebra, but as they get older, about 3 years or so, 2 years, and about a foot and a half or so in size, they have sort of a chain link pattern across their body. And they're lightning fast. They move incredibly fast. Even in slow motion when you run your tape, they move out of frame very quickly.
They stay so still, though.
Very. And the very small ones, finger-length size, spend the time down on the bottom, while the larger adults are usually closer to the surface and along the weed edges looking for prey. And they will reduce the diversity of the fish population dramatically. There's a real concern where they encroach on salmon and trout, because many of them are found in the bellies of chain pickerel. Now, to sort of summarize my year in review here, this is a snapping turtle, and one of very large size. The shell, I measured the shell of this character against my underwater camera housing, and they matched, and so that was somewhere about 1.5 feet in length, maybe a little bit more. But I was intrigued. The reddish color in the water is because of tannins that leach in, and so the water was really tea stained, and we're about 3 feet down on the water column, so that's why it has this reddish look. But poking through the murk, I came across this fellow or lady, and it was very interested in the lens of my camera. I was really surprised, because usually they either they want to flee or they want to put up a fight. But again, it may have been the lens of the camera that it was looking at and seeing its reflection that it wanted to find out who was on the other side.
And it didn't snap at you to make it interesting?
Not at all.
Well, he's quite a character.
He's large. And in the next shot, you'll see the claws. And they're about almost the length of your small finger. And it's certainly, in the mouth region, is certainly no place to put your fingers.
He's going away,
Yeah.
waiting by. That's great. What's
Quite a
fascinating?
variety.
Yes, yes. Let's do it again. What's so amazing is we think of cold, gray Nova Scotia waters. Oh, it's so boring in comparison to the tropical waters, the exotic, the species, the colors. But I felt like we were on a complete adventure.
Well, it's a great diversity. We don't have some of the spectacular colors of the tropics in our saltwater fish, but you have to look sort of smaller scale. We do have a lot of creatures there. I mean, I haven't shown some of the nudibranchs, which are sea slugs with their little their gills on their surface, and they're really quite pretty. But they're small. You're not looking at some of the beautiful ones that you see in the tropics. You're going to get almost a foot long.
Small is beautiful. You'll have to bring us those next time.
The next time.
So what do you have planned for the next seasons?
Well, we'll be off after a little more chain pickerel. I'd like to go after the whales some more this year also. And we'll just, you never know what you're going to find when you're out paddling around our waters.
Mm-hmm. What seasons do you dive?
All year long.
Oh, I can't bear to think about it.
I'm not stopped by weather. Actually, usually, I mean, even in the winter, usually it's warmer in the water than being out of the water. So you try and get in as quickly as possible.
Yes, on the shore and trying to decide.
But that question comes up quite often as they see us trekking off into the water is, you know, how can you do this?
And what do you see at this time of year? Do you have seasons when you see certain things?
Now it's a little bit quiet. Many things are tucked away. When the water drops around below 0 and below 4 degrees, everything tucks away into its cubby holes for the winter. When the water starts to warm up, say the end of March, the fish and the invertebrates will start to come out. So now I'm looking for sort of scenic shots and just to see what's around, who's left.
Who's left. And do you have plans, do you have dates when you go after certain shots or certain types of animals?
The fresh water is cued by warm water. So my freshwater species, I'm usually out in the spring looking at spawning activity. And again, there's spawning activity in the oceans in, say, April. And so, yeah, there are seasons that I try and make sure I'm out a lot to see what's going on.
And not only, you're not just seeing beautiful shots, you're tracking the absence or presence of new species or absence of species that have been taken over, their territory taken over. That must be...
It's sort of the biologist in me. I mean, I like to... So much of it you read, but it's also nice to see what's going on and what impacts. There are many people I've talked to, and I've showed them my footage, and they had no idea what was going on in their own backyard.
No, I just learned that, or I heard that the Keji loons have the highest arsenic level.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
So that you don't know, you see their beauty, but you have to understand that we've got to keep it by protecting it.
And the problem with the aquatic environment is you can't see through it. I mean, it's not like you can see a mile through air. When you're in the water, you're restricted by the visibility in the water. So it takes a great deal of time to go through. Plus, you know, what I see one year doesn't always apply to the next year. And that I've really noticed that, especially with the spawning species that I've been tracking for several years. You look at the cues, and to understand the story, you have to go back year after year after year, because the whole story isn't told in one year.
Yeah. So you need those anecdotes to represent the research that's being done, and it must be an important. And in the meantime, you get to take your son off to see the wonderful whales.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So you have to come back with new footage in a new season.
Yes.
And show us some more of your adventures.
Well, hopefully Wilma will still be around. As she approaches her sexual maturity, she may leave. So we may not have her for, we may have her for another couple of years, and then she'll be gone.
Well, thanks very much. It was fascinating.
Great, thanks.
Really enjoyed it.